Welcome to the New Orleans Jazz Museum. On behalf of the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park, we're so delighted to have this partnership with the New Orleans Jazz Museum. On Thursdays, we have our piano hour, and throughout the week, we have programs over at our site at 916 North Peters. And so our mission is dedicated to instilling a public appreciation for New Orleans jazz music, history, and culture. And so we're so grateful to have this resource here available for visitors to come and experience New Orleans jazz music. And so for today's program, we have a wonderful international touring and traveling pianist. He specializes in traditional R&B, New Orleans jazz style piano, and this particular genre, you will only find it here, and he has brought this genre outside of New Orleans and has continued to put his own style into it. If you are interested in any more of his shows, you can check out his website. I believe he will have a show at Maple Leaf Grill or Maple Leaf Bar at 6 p.m. And then on Saturday and Sunday, he will be at Redfish Grill. So please enjoy this program. And at the end of the program, check out his CD. So please help me welcome up Joe Krown.
Thank you very much. Got it all in. Okay, as she said, my name is Joe Krown, and I play New Orleans style piano. And I'm going to try to give you guys an idea of what that means and what the difference is in some of the other styles of piano. So the guy that really is credited with the fork in the road, which created the sound and the style of New Orleans piano, was a guy named Henry Roland Byrd, and he was called Professor Longhair. And we were listening to some of that on the house music before I came up. But I'm going to play a little bit of Professor Longhair music just so you can get a feel of what this is. And then I'm going to roll back and lead into it and then go from there, okay? This is one of my favorite Professor Longhair pieces. It's called Tipitina. Thank you. That is Professor Longhair, and that is the New Orleans piano style. So I'm going to roll it back a little bit before that so you can get an idea. Now that you kind of got the feel of what the sound is, I'm going to kind of build up to that so you can see where it all kind of came from. So I'm going to take it back a bunch of years because Professor Longhair, I think his first recordings were in the late 40s. And I'm going to take the piano styles back into around the turn of the century. And there was a style that we call stride piano. And it's called stride because I got to keep using this microphone because they may be doing this over streaming kind of thing. But they use the stride thing is when your left hand is, it all happens in one hand. And with this jumping, when you're doing with the microphone, you're doing this jumping like that, that's where they get the term stride from. So I'm going to play something with a little bit of a stride. Let's see. This is Way Down Yonder, New Orleans. Thank you very much. As you can see, I kept the left hand doing the jumping stride thing, and I play the melody, and then I do a little of what we call improvisation. Because all this music is really some form of jazz, meaning that in jazz music there is a lot of freedom to provide your own melodies to the song, somewhere in the song. So I always go and play the melody first, and then I go from there, do some improvisation, and then come back and play the melody after that. So That is, that is stride piano. The next style I want to talk about is something what we call boogie woogie piano. And boogie woogie piano is a little bit different because the rhythm is a consistent, what we call 8 to the bar. And the way that I'm going to describe this, because I'm going to assume nobody here knows anything about music, when you tap your foot, those are beats, and then when you do something like a waltz, you get 3 beats: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Something like a foxtrot dance beat is in 4: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Boogie woogie divides that up and goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. That's why we call it 8 to the bar. And it's all in the left-hand pattern is in that kind of rhythm, and it's instead of doing the jumping, you're going to hear this 8 to the bar thing, and we can play anything we want on top of that. We can do songs to that, or we can just the traditional boogie woogie piano players just kind of jammed along, and they had some sort of signature thing that they would do, and the rest of the song would just be improvisation. But I'm going to play something that has a little bit of a song to it, just so you can get the idea of the fact that this is just something that we do rhythmically, and it's called boogie woogie. So this is I'll do this one. This is a traditional song. I'm going to do a boogie woogie style. And the thing to notice is that my left hand will be doing this rhythm, and my right hand will be playing the melody. Okay? Thanks a lot. We can see that Boogie Woogie can be very fast and very flamboyant and all that kind of stuff. So that's Boogie Woogie. That was Stride. Now let's talk about New Orleans piano. Okay. New Orleans piano, up until this guy, Professor Longhair, for those of you that weren't here when I started, Professor Longhair was, otherwise known as Henry Roland Byrd. He was kind of the fork in the road between all these traditional styles and what became the New Orleans piano style. And I can't really say that he was the guy that really invented it per se, but he was definitely the first guy to record it and to be known for it. Because I think there might have been other piano players that were trying to do something similar and they just weren't as good or proficient or just never got the opportunities to record, because this is in the, the late 40s we're talking about. So anyway, what he did was he kind of put this little Caribbean flavor to it and put a little kind of syncopation. And a syncopation is kind of a skip. So when we play Boogie Woogie, it's always... Professor Longhair introduced this kind of rhythm. And of course, we know from one of the most famous piano players to come out of New Orleans, that all comes from Professor Longhair, and he introduced that rhythm to it. And all the piano players that came after Professor Longhair from New Orleans, at least the ones that I consider the giants of the piano that were alive when I got down here, because I've only been here about 32, 33 years, like people like Dr. John or Alan Toussaint, were all about playing Boogie Woogie and playing like Professor Longhair, and it all kind of came from that. And the similarities are that in Boogie Woogie, we play the left hand keeps the rhythm, we play the melody in the right hand, but the whole thing about the New Orleans style is it has this little kind of syncopated feel to it, and it's got this Caribbean kind of feel to it. And what we call this whole kind of thing, we call it the mambo groove. So I'm going to play another Professor Longhair piece, and this is Professor Longhair. By the way, during Mardi Gras, there's a lot of like Christmas ends and Mardi Gras begins, Christmas carols stop, and all the Mardi Gras music comes in. It's kind of like rolls one into the other. And Professor Longhair had several songs that were very big Mardi Gras songs. And it's great for me because I love that music. And it's like all, White Christmas and on all that stuff, and Jingle Bells all ends, and then all of a sudden it's all this great Professor Longhair music. But I want to play one of them. This is called Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It's got a very Caribbean syncopated kind of feel, and this is what we call the mambo feel. Thank you very much. As you can see, there's a lot going on in there. There's a lot of different things happening against each other, and it's got a definitely distinctive feel that's a much more bouncing and rhythmic than a straight stride style or a straight boogie woogie, which is very square and, you know, right on the beat and everything. This has got a whole bunch of different things going on around it and on top of it that make it that sound that we call the New Orleans piano sound. And that type of feel is called the mambo feel, which is in just about everything that comes out of New Orleans after that has some sort of reference to that type of feel. You know, all the R&B, all the stuff that came, all the big hits that came out of the 60s, all had some reference to that sort of feel in there. So I want to talk about some of that because there are a couple of piano players that I want to talk about that were definitely influenced and used it to create some of the music that came out of New Orleans. And if you go back and you listen to some of these hits by like Lee Dorsey or Irma Thomas or, you know, Benny Spellman, Ernie Cato, they all had that kind of sound to it, and they were all produced by most of them were all produced by one gentleman named Alan Toussaint. And Alan was, he passed, I think, in 2016, but he wrote not all of it, but a good part of the music that were the hits that were being produced out of New Orleans in the 1960s. He was kind of like the Berry Gordy was to Motown, Alan Toussaint was to the New Orleans sound. And he wrote great songs like It's Raining by Irma Thomas or Ruler of My Heart by Irma Thomas. He wrote Working in a Coal Mine by Lee Dorsey, Mother-in-Law by Ernie Cato, and he wrote other songs. He wrote, what was the name of that song? A Patti LaBelle tune? Lady Marmalade, that was it. He wrote that song. He wrote songs for Paul McCartney. He was one of the great songwriters of the century. In fact, they've named a street after him here in New Orleans, and we're very proud to, you know, have this talent here. And we became friends towards the end of his life, and I used to, anytime I got around him, I was like, you know, feed me the stuff, you know. And he was always like, I want to play like Professor Longhair. I want to play boogie woogie. That's all I got to tell you. As far as piano's concerned, that's just it. I don't play gospel. I don't play traditional jazz. I just want to play like that. And that was another nod to the fact that what Professor Longhair really meant to this sound. So anyway, I want to play one of Alan's songs, and it sort of has references to that mambo feel in it. But this was a song that he recorded, and it was his own. He didn't have a lot of recordings that were his hits. He wrote and produced songs for other people that had hits. But this one song was the biggest song that he had a hit with. And it's funny because Glenn Campbell recorded this song, and he had a massive hit with it. And there's been times I've been playing all this stuff, and I'll play this song, and someone will come up to me and say, what, you know, I love your music, but why'd you play that Glenn Campbell song? And it's like, it's not a Glenn Campbell song. It's Alan Toussaint. So the name of the song is called Southern Night, and Alan always ended his show with it. It was his signature piece because it was the one song that he really had that was a hit under his own name with him singing and everything else like that. All the other songs that he wrote, other people had hits with. So I want to play this one. And you can hear the influence of Professor Longhair throughout the whole thing. beautiful song, and as you can see from the way I play it, there's definitely a lot of the Professor Longhair influence, and the rhythms and everything are all coming from Professor Longhair. So I want to move up to another piano player who was one of my heroes, was a guy named Mac Rebenak, and they called him Dr. John. And I didn't grow up in New Orleans. Like I said, I've only been here 32 years or something like that. And I grew up in New York, and my first introduction to this type of style was Dr. John. I played a lot of boogie woogie and ragtime when I was growing up, and Dr. John was the first kind of like guy to really kind of get north and have a sound that I can associate with. And so I want to play some of his music, and this is one song that he wrote that was one of his more popular ones, and it's got kind of a stride style, but it definitely has that New Orleans flair to it, and this is a song called Such a Night. Thank you very much. I want to talk about how in later years, and when I mean like in the 60s and 70s, gospel music found its way into the New Orleans piano styles. And, you know, this is post Professor Longhair and Fats Domino and all those guys. A lot of the piano players were starting to play church music inside of the popular music that was coming out of here. So I want to do another Dr. John piece. This is a song that he wrote, which kind of has a gospel feel to it. He calls it Dorothy, which was his mother's name. In fact, I recorded it on this new CD that I have out. And this new CD that I have it's called Tribute, and it's to tribute to all of this style and these piano players. Because I kind of been feeling that, you know, I mean, I play this style, and there's a few other guys that are kind of in my age group, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, that still play this. But there's not a lot of guys coming up behind us that are really kind of doing this. So I really felt it kind of important to get a body of work out that was really dedicated to this, to try to keep it a little bit alive and a little bit present in the musical, you know, world or whatever that's out there. But anyway, this is a tune called Dorothy, and it's real beautiful, and it's got that gospel feel to it. And it's by Dr. John. Thanks a lot. I want to talk about one more piano player from New Orleans, and his name was James Booker. In fact, later today, I'm playing at the Maple Leaf Bar. In the back bar, they have this thing called the Booker Piano Sessions. And he was a very significant guy that died at a very young age, about the age of 43. He had a lot of emotional issues and substance abuse and all that kind of stuff. And at times he was homeless, and times he had places to stay and live. And the thing about Booker is that he carved out his own sound and style inside of the New Orleans style. And it wasn't trying to sound like Boogie Woogie, and it wasn't trying to sound like Professor Longhair, and it wasn't trying to sound like Church, but it's definitely got a New Orleans feel to it. And what he really kind of did, his significance was that he kind of opened it up to make us think that, well, we don't have to just play like Professor Longhair. We can bend all the rules, because that's what he kind of did. And he kept the whole New Orleans sound. And when he played, he was like a child prodigy. Alan Toussaint told me that Booker played as great as he played when he was about 12 years old. He played at that level. And he would sometimes play straight through a song. Sometimes he would throw in some classical music. Sometimes he would quote some Beatles tunes or some other pop tunes and then go back into it. Whatever came into his mind, he just had that memory of all that music stored up and played all this great stuff. And he never played anything the same way twice. So I want to play one of his tunes. This was one of his more recognizable tunes. It's called Classified. I recorded it on this CD, and kind of goes like this. Thanks a lot. Okay, so I'm going to do one more song. I'll be over here if you want to come over and just say hello, find out where I'm playing, or pick up one of these new CDs of mine called Tribute. This last song was a little bit of a controversial song because it was originally recorded by Ray Charles. The writing credit went to his record producer, Ahmet Erdogan, and all the music was kind of stolen from a boogie-woogie guy named Cow Cow Davenport. So it has a couple of different twists to it. It's a song called Mess Around. I love to end with it. Professor Longhair played it. Dr. John played it. We all kind of down here in New Orleans like to play it, but this is my version of it. It's called Mess Around. Thank you very much for coming out. And like I said, I'll be over here if you want to come over and talk to me afterwards.
Joe Krown, everyone. Again, if you didn't remember, check him out at Maple Leaf Bar tonight at 6 p.m. and on Saturday and Sunday at Red Fish Grill. Please check out his CDs. And if you're interested in any more park service programs, check out our site at 916 North Peters. We have programs on Friday and Saturday at 2 p.m. See you next time.